Language learning is a confusing process that nearly everyone has dabbled in but few have mastered. This leads to tons of misinformation. I'm going to be going over the top 5 language learning myths, and more importantly, the truth behind them. Hi guys, my name is Connor and I make videos about everything travel and languages. Over the past 5 years, I've studied 5+ languages and taught English to over 100 students. During this time, I've constantly come across the same statements about language learning on YouTube, from my friends, and in the media. These statements can often be demotivating, but at the same time, misleading and unfounded in fact. So today, I wanted to talk about the top 5 language learning myths and what is, in my experience, the reality behind them. The first language learning myth that I hear all the time is that language learning is a talent. In other words, there are some people who are born with an exceptional ability to learn languages, while the rest of us struggle to make basic progress. This myth is especially prevalent on YouTube and is spread by viral polyglots who claim to speak a huge number of languages or to have learned a language in an insanely short period of time. In reality, many of these viral polyglots only have a basic knowledge of the languages they claim to speak. At the same time, many people claim to have language learning difficulties that prevent them from learning a foreign language. However, studies can neither prove the existence of a language learning disability nor link foreign language success to intelligence. The only people who are genetically disadvantaged in learning a foreign language are those that already have significant language disabilities in their native language. So then how is it that some people succeed in attaining a high proficiency in multiple languages, while others can barely tackle the basics of a second language? Well, for the most part, it just comes down to finding an efficient study method and having enough motivation. In school, we learn languages by memorizing vocab and studying for grammar quizzes. But for most people, making these methods the focus of their language learning is boring and inefficient. The most successful language learners experiment with different study techniques, consume interesting content in their target language, and have a clear motivation. True hyperpolyglots, who speak dozens of languages fluently, spend most of their lives learning and using different languages. For example, the Greek hyperpolyglot Yannis Economou works as a translator for the European Commission and has studied languages since he was 5 years old. The second language learning myth that I hear all the time is that only kids can become fluent in another language. This myth originates in the critical period hypothesis, a theory in linguistics that proposes a biologically determined period for learning a first language. The critical period hypothesis has been used to explain why feral children have significant difficulties in language acquisition. However, it is not widely accepted that this critical period also exists for learning a foreign language. In fact, adults have many advantages over children in language learning. For example, when learning a foreign language, adults have an easier time expressing their emotions and understanding complex grammar rules because of prior experience in their first language. Since adults have larger vocabularies, they also benefit more from similar words in their native and target languages. For the most part, people just forget to consider that children have to dedicate the first few years of their lives to learning their mother tongue. The third language learning myth that I hear all the time is that you can't get fluent in a foreign language without having lived abroad. While it's true that living in a country where your target language is spoken can be an excellent learning opportunity and motivator, it provides no additional benefit unless you actually take advantage of it. I'd be surprised if you didn't have a friend or family member who went to a foreign country to work or study and came back with little to no knowledge of the language. This can easily happen when living in a foreign country if you don't actively make an effort to meet speakers of your target language and incorporate it into your daily routine. Luckily though, in our hyper-connected world, you can easily replicate the benefits of living in a foreign country without even leaving your own home. With YouTube and Netflix, you have access to practically limitless quantities of content in your target language. Through language exchange apps like Tandem and italki, you can meet hundreds of native speakers in whichever language you're trying to learn. Using these tools, I was able to reach a conversational level in French without ever having set foot in a French-speaking country. The fourth language learning myth that I hear all the time is that learning a language means studying grammar books. Grammar is an essential part of any language. However, most people often overestimate how big of a role it plays in language learning because of their experience with high school language classes. Many grammatical concepts can be learned just by consuming content in your target language without ever touching a grammar book. Personally, I use grammar books to get an overview of a language's grammar when I'm just starting out. Later, when I'm at a more advanced level, I'll use them to fill in any holes that I may still have. But for the majority of the time I spend studying languages, I prefer to use more engaging resources. For example, when I want to work on my Italian, I'll message Italian friends, watch Italian YouTubers, and do Italian flashcards on my phone, but rarely will I open a grammar book. I'll probably do a more in-depth overview of my language learning routine in a future video. The fifth and final language learning myth that I hear all the time is that it takes years of study to be able to use and enjoy a foreign language. While it's true that becoming fluent in a foreign language is a multiple year or even lifelong process, you can still use and enjoy your language skills after just a few weeks of study. For most languages, skills like understanding street signs and using basic phrases can be learned in the days leading up to a trip. One time, I was eating at a restaurant and overheard the two guys sitting at the table next to mine speaking in a language that I didn't know. My curiosity got the best of me, so I went up and asked where they were from, and they said Serbia. Before leaving the restaurant, I looked up a Serbian farewell on Google. I proceeded to say,
Odom prijatelji,
and left the two Serbians completely speechless, just by learning a word of Serbian. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Also, let me know in the comments if you've encountered any language learning myths that I didn't cover.
Odom prijatelji.
Thanks for watching and see you next time.